This astonishing but true and well-documented story took place in the Atlantic Ocean in 1982, involving a 29-year-old man named Stephen Callahan. Steve was sailing alone from the Canary island of El Hierro to the island of Antigua in the Caribbean. His route crossed the entire Atlantic Ocean. Having recently divorced his wife, this voyage was meant to relieve his stress and clear his mind. Callahan was an experienced sailor, so he felt calm and confident. Nothing seemed to foretell trouble. For the first week, the weather was perfect. Steve listened to the radio, exercised, and felt at home. But after a week far into the Atlantic, the weather suddenly changed. Winds picked up to 30 kilometers per hour, and the waves grew stronger. Yet for an experienced sailor like Steve, it wasn't anything extraordinary. He had seen worse weather and wasn't worried. That night, he went to his cabin to sleep. Just as he began to doze off, something massive struck the boat. Steve thought it might have been a whale. Whatever it was, water immediately began flooding in. The hull was torn open, and the boat started sinking rapidly. Within seconds, water was already over his head. Realizing the boat couldn't be saved, Steve knew he had only a few seconds to reach the life raft on deck. He hurriedly cut one of the lines attaching the instant inflatable raft to the boat and tossed it into the water. He tried to trigger the inflation mechanism. Nothing. He tried again and again, and only on the 10th try did the raft finally deploy. Steve jumped in without hesitation. It seemed he was safe, but then a horrifying thought struck him. The raft didn't have enough supplies to survive. Everything essential was still in the sinking boat. Knowing he had no choice, Steve dove back into the wreck. Inside, it was pitch dark. He managed to locate the emergency kit. It was tied down. He struggled to cut it loose. And as he found the exit, the hatch slammed shut. The boat was underwater, and Steve was sinking with it. As his lungs were about to burst, a massive wave hit the boat and blew the hatch open. In the final seconds before drowning, Steve escaped. He jumped back into the raft and watched as the boat disappeared beneath the waves. Though safe for now, he couldn't rest. Strong winds and massive waves made the raft toss and turn. It was cold, wet, and terrifying. Steve shivered, afraid he might die of hypothermia before morning, but he survived the night, and by morning, the storm had passed. The rising sun revealed the full horror of the situation. His boat was gone. He was alone in the middle of the Atlantic, far from any human contact. Steve had no means of communication. He had told people back home not to worry if he didn't return for 5 to 6 weeks, so no one would be looking for him. He calculated he was 1,500 kilometers from land, drifting further west. He was far from shipping lanes and realized he'd have to reach them to have any hope of being rescued. He estimated they were about 500 kilometers to the west, and although the winds were in his favor, the trip would take at least 2 weeks. And he only had 4 liters of drinking water. The cruel irony, the biggest desert is the ocean, and without fresh water, his survival chances were almost zero. Steve discovered he had 3 solar stills, emergency desalination devices, along with a harpoon and some rations. These devices were invented during World War II for downed pilots who were trained to use them. Steve was not. He had no idea how to operate them. Believing the sun's heat would cause salt to separate from seawater, he filled one still, hoping to have fresh water in half an hour. But it didn't work. The water remained salty. That night, a thunderstorm gave him an idea. Collect rainwater using the raft's canopy. But the water tasted like vomit, poisoned by the orange dye in the fabric. It was undrinkable. Steve feared he was doomed. That night, he wrote a farewell note. On the second day, he sipped water sparingly. If rationed carefully, it might last a few days. Thirst tormented him daily. After a week, the water ran out. He knew he had to make the stills work. He sacrificed one to take it apart and study it. That helped. He learned he simply needed to inflate them properly. Finally, they worked. Steve had fresh water, about half a liter a day from 2 stills. Not much, but enough to live. 7 days later, a new problem arose. He was starving. By day 14, he still hadn't seen any sea life. Just when he was about to give up, he saw a fish. He waited with his harpoon, struck quickly, and succeeded. He had food. He ate it raw, sometimes sun-dried. The spinal and eye fluids of fish also helped hydrate him. For the first time, hope returned, but the ocean was relentless. One night, Steve was half asleep when something thrashed in the water. Then, bang! The raft was struck and launched into the air. A massive shark was attacking. If it punctured the raft, Steve was dead. He fought it off with his harpoon, striking repeatedly until it swam away. Soon, a large ship appeared. Steve lit a flare. Perfect conditions. Calm sea, clear night. He felt sure they'd see him. The ship came so close, he smelled diesel. Convinced he was saved, Steve drank some water he'd been hoarding, but the ship passed by. Flares often don't help. Ships aren't always looking, and even when they are, spotting something in the vast ocean is incredibly hard. Steve remained alone. Over the next days, more ships passed, 9 in total. None saw him. Each day brought hope, followed by despair. He cried for the first time. He had passed the shipping lanes. His next chance at rescue was in the Caribbean, 1,500 kilometers away. Day 40, the raft's warranty expired. It could fail any day now. The tropical sun grew hotter. He needed more water, but the stills couldn't keep up. At one point, he would have traded an arm for a glass of water. Hunger gnawed at him. His body consumed itself. Catching fish became inconsistent. One day, a fish pierced the raft's lower chamber with the harpoon's broken tip. It deflated. The raft became unstable and drifted slower. Steve tried patching it, but failed. He had to re-inflate it constantly, exhausting and calorie draining. After 10 days, he gave up, completely drained. But desperation gave him one last burst of energy. He spotted a fork. Maybe it could hold the patch in place. It worked. The raft held air. Steve felt immense relief, the biggest victory of his life. Day 54, his joy faded. Supplies were nearly gone, still hundreds of kilometers from land. Day 60, time crawled painfully. Day 66, both solar stills failed. Their filters rotted. No way to make fresh water. Day 69, he had 3 cans of water left. His body was poisoned by salt. Sores covered his skin. His body screamed to drink all the water at once, but his mind knew that meant death. It was like seeing paradise from hell. Day 73, he was amazed to still be alive. Days 74 and 75, he stared endlessly at the horizon, hoping to see land. Day 76. Steve was completely spent. The water was gone. He lay hopeless until he heard something. Bottles clinking, signs of land. At sunrise, he saw the one thing he had dreamed of all these days, an island, just tens of kilometers away. But as he got closer, he saw towering cliffs and impassable coral reefs. It looked impossible to reach, but Steve didn't care. He'd climb it if he had to. Just as he was about to try, something happened. Salvation came first. Fishermen had spotted his raft, thanks to the birds circling above. They asked, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" and took him to a hospital, giving him water along the way. After 76 days adrift in the open ocean, Steve had lost down to 45 kilograms. He spent another month and a half in the hospital, eventually reuniting with family he thought he'd never see again. Steve said he didn't get scurvy because he got vitamins from fish blood. The small island where he was rescued was only 100 kilometers from his original destination. He turned his experience into a best-selling survival memoir and later a sea survival guide. Some of his discoveries were patented and used to improve marine safety gear. In 2012, Ang Lee invited Steve to be a consultant on the movie Life of Pi. His story has since been featured in documentaries as well. For 76 days of drifting on the raft in the open ocean, Steve lost 45 kilograms. In the hospital, he had to stay for a month and a half, after which he met with his parents, whom he had already lost hope of seeing again. Callahan said he did not get scurvy because he got vitamins from the blood of fish. The small island where he was found was only 100 kilometers from his original destination. Steve Callahan summarized his survival experience in memoirs about his drift, which became a bestseller, as well as a guidebook for surviving at sea. Several of his discoveries made during the drift were patented and used in the development of more advanced maritime safety equipment. In 2012, Ann Clee invited Callahan to consult on sea survival for the film Life of Pi. Steve's story has also been featured in documentaries. That's all for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and check out the 2 previous videos.